Thank you for watching or listening to this candidate forum. This is one of several hour-long conversations between candidates running for a seat on the KPFK local board. My name is Dorothy Keene, and I'm a volunteer with the League of Women Voters, Pasadena area. I will be your host and moderator. KPFK is a listener-sponsored radio station, one of the 5 stations of the Pacific Network, the country's first and only independent national radio network. The views expressed during this program are those of the candidates, not of KPFK. All viable candidates have been invited to participate in these discussions. All candidates receive guidelines and ground rules for the debate. The order of candidates' answers to the debate questions was randomly generated. Time limits for responses will be strictly observed. The format we will follow is as follows. First, I will invite the candidates to introduce themselves briefly. We will address one question from a prepared list to each candidate, and that candidate will get 2 minutes in which to respond. Any of the remaining candidates who wish to comment, either that they agree or perhaps don't agree or wish to add something, will be given 30 seconds to do so. If needed, the candidate who answered the question will have another 2 minutes to respond to the commentary. At the end of the forum, the candidates will have 1 minute to give a closing statement to make their case as to why you should vote for them. So with that, I invite our first candidate, Paul Roberson, to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Paul Roberson, and I am running for the local station board of KPFK. I would like to solicit your support and your vote. I'm a recent law school graduate, a listener, a member of the community, and the current vice chair of the LSB, who wants to play a positive role and make the world a better place. I have a strong passion for community engagement, community service, and direct advocacy for communities of color and demographics that have been marginalized, discriminated against, and whose voices have been silenced or ignored. I will continue to bring to this board a youthful idealism, stamina, a fresh perspective, positivity, and respect. As a recent graduate, a resident, and an activist, I've been involved in campaigns to address police brutality, LGBTQ rights, the increase in the minimum wage, and prison and education reform. I want to continue to serve on this board because I truly believe in the mission of KPFK and the ideals of freedom of speech. I also want to work for the development and growth of the station so that it can be a resource for another generation and provide insights into cultures, people, opinions, and perspectives that are often ignored by the mainstream. Thank you so much for your time and for your vote.
Our next candidate is Mr. Osborne.
Hello, my name is Jim Osborne. I'm a 35-year trial lawyer practicing here in Los Angeles. I specialize in representing injured victims and injured citizens. I am a proud father of 3 adult children and a national soccer referee for AYSO. This is my first time running for any office, including the one here at KPFK. I'm motivated to get involved because I've been a lifelong listener of Pacifica, and for the past 30 years here in Los Angeles at KPFK. I think that the attributes that I can bring to the board is a focus on legal representation, meaning that having represented and been a mediator here in Los Angeles County, I'm used to looking at problems from different facets and working with people to resolve their issues and problems. And I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have here tonight about how we can all best serve our community. Thank you.
And Jamie?
Hello, my name's Jamie Gomez. I'm an educator and business graduate who has taught accounting. I have served as an officer on the KPFK local station board for the past 3 years, for the past 2 years as chair of the local station board, and before that for a year as secretary. I've also served on the Pacific National Board Audit Committee for the past 2 years. During the time that I have been active with the local station board, programming has improved. And we've avoided a bankruptcy of the Pacifica National Network. Please support me and our candidate slate to help strengthen KPFK, to ensure that KPFK and the Pacifica Network will continue to be able to provide an alternative, progressive voice, not heard elsewhere.
Thank you. Ms. Van Gunten?
I'm Elizabeth von Gunten from Ojai. I'm a lifelong community organizer and listener to Pacifica Radio, in WBAI initially back on the East Coast, and in the last 30, 40 years here in Los Angeles to KPFK. I've been involved with any number of different social movements over that time, from women's health to sustainable agriculture to food cooperatives to Central American Solidarity and the Sanctuary Movement. So my experience is broad and deep. I've sat on boards at local, regional, and national levels. I've got extensive nonprofit board training from the Community Foundation, and I'd like the chance to put it at the service of KPFK.
Thank you very much. The first question will be directed to Mr. Roberson, and it is, what makes KPFK Pacifica unique when compared to other listener-supported media?
Well, that's a really good question. As far as Pacifica is concerned, or KPFK is concerned, it's a grassroots, listener-funded, listener-supported, listener-produced station. It's not for profits. It's not funded by corporations. So there's no agenda. The information is transparent. It's open, and it's also representative of a very diverse demographic. Whether it's LGBTQ, women, African Americans, immigrant communities, it really gives a very rich representation of those of the greater Los Angeles area and further. So I think that's what's different and what's really important and why it's such a value to us as a collective, group of listeners.
All right, thank you. Mr. Osborne, would you care to comment?
Ask a question or comment on?
A comment on the answer that was just given. Either you can agree, or you can refute, or you can add something.
Thank you for the clarification. No, I totally agree, and I see the same good qualities about KPFK that we were just discussing.
All right, thank you. Jamie?
Yes, I also agree, and I'd like to add that KPFK and the Pacifica Network speaks truth to power that is not heard on other media outlets.
And Ms. Van Gunten?
Yes, I agree also. I think that what underlies the difference between KPFK and any other radio station I can think of is that we're accountable to the listeners, not to corporate sponsors. That makes all the difference in the world in what we're able to say and the voices we're able to bring to the air. And beyond that, for myself, I'd say that a primal difference between KPFK and any other station is that KPFK is just more interesting.
Thank you. Paul, you get the final word. You get 2 additional minutes if you wish to expand on what was said.
Pretty much what they said. I think we're all pretty much in agreement on the positive, aspect of this station and why it's valuable.
All right, thank you very much. All right, now for the next question, I'm going to direct it to Mr. Osborne, And that question is, what is community radio? Is KPFK community radio, and is KPFK community radio, and should it be? How is that different than public radio? If you think that it is, explain.
Well, public radio seems to me to be, I'm not an expert in radio, but public radio seems to be more top-down directed. And what we have in community radio is an idea that sprang up from the local grassroots and continues to be very much a grass-up type of organization, meaning that the management, the people who are on the air hosts, these are the people who come up with their own ideas for their show. They live here in our community. We're not importing radio shows and from outside the community. We do have some national programming. As we know, we have, for example, Democracy Now!, but that comes from a sister station as opposed to one of 200 or 300 different satellite stations. But most of the programming that you're going to hear on KPFK is locally sourced, locally produced, and driven by the people who live and work in this community. And that's what really makes KPFK and all of the other stations that are sister stations, the 5 sisters in the Pacifica network. And that's what we're most proud of. And that's what we're trying to keep alive here, is the interest, the talent, the resources, and the drive to serve our community.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yes, KPFK is community radio. We're not NPR because NPR accepts gifts and donations that tend to influence its news reporting. However, if our community radio experiment is to survive, we need to do a better job at raising funds and finding sponsors.
Thank you, Ms. Van Gunten.
I'd agree with what's been said and add that I think that what characterizes community radio in the form of KPFK is that we are a reflection of the community here. We're a reflection of our listeners, sponsors. And listener sponsors are able to bring their influence to bear on programming and governance. And it's very different from a corporate model.
Thank you. And Mr. Robertson?
Yes, I totally agree with everything that's been said. Primarily, community radio is, I think the primary mission is, is service and to be representative of that community. And like he said, NPR is a station that they get a lot of corporate sponsorship, government funding. So they're incumbent on, maintaining that type of support, that financial support. KPA, we're supported by the listeners, we're funded by the listeners, and it comes, like you said, from the ground up. It's a grassroots message, membership, and listenership.
Thank you. Mr. Osborne, would you like to expand?
No, thank you. I think that covers it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, and the next question is going to be directed to Mr. Gomez. And it has to do with underrepresented communities. Please define underrepresented communities. How will you reach out to the underrepresented communities as a member of the LSB? How do you plan to work to see that KPFK Airways better reflect our underrepresented communities?
Thank you, Dorothy. The bottom line is that moderate to ultra right-wing views are overrepresented in our current media spheres of influence. Therefore, underrepresented communities include those communities whose liberal and socialist, dare I say socialist, views are not heard through traditional media outlets. KPFK and the Pacifica Network continue to provide and improve programming that reaches these underserved communities. In fact, KPFK, through its airing of the Tom Hartman Show in the Los Angeles radio market, was instrumental in convincing Bernie Sanders to run for president in the 2016 presidential election.
All right, thank you. Would you like to expand, Ms. Van Guten?
I'd like to express my gratitude to KPFK for providing the Spanish language programming in the evenings, 4 hours, every weekday evening. It's done a lot to help me improve my Spanish, improve my understanding of the culture. You get news there that you don't get anywhere else, and I'm grateful. So I'm hoping that we can expand that even further.
Thank you. And Mr. Roberson?
Yes, I guess I would define underrepresented communities to be something that's like the youth, the elderly, or any population that's traditionally underserved or underrepresented. I listen to this station. I participate in program events. And when given the opportunity, I try to provide input on the media consume and to be a vocal advocate for the station and the community in which I live. I think as a member of the LSB, it'll be important to continue to engage our community. Like she mentioned a second ago, the monolingual community, or also even people in the Caribbean. I know on Sundays, I think, they have news from the diaspora, which is very illuminating to me, because I definitely learned a lot about other cultures and experiences.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne.
Two communities that I think are underrepresented at KPFK are the Asian community and the youth community. I don't hear any programming directed at the large Asian community here in Los Angeles, and I'd like to know sometime what my fellow listeners and board members think we can do to improve that. And perhaps one of the major things that we can do, I think, is turn to the youth in this community and figure out a way to get them involved in the station, to have their voices heard, so that we can prepare them to take over the station and the operations someday soon.
Thank you. Mr. Osborne, you get the final word on this if you care for it. I mean, Mr. Gomez, please excuse me.
Thank you. I have to agree with Mr. Osborne in the respect that we really need to reach out to generations X, Y, and Z, because after all is considered, there's only so many more years left for us graying socialists, and we really need to reach out to the younger generation, the new generation that will take up after we're gone.
All right, thank you. And the next question is going to be directed to Ms. Van Guten. And that has to do with financial issues. In your opinion, how healthy or unhealthy is KPFK financially? How would you describe the financial problems in a nutshell? And how do you propose to start dealing with these problems?
At this point, I know only what I have heard over the airwaves, so there's a lot of background information I would need to be able to comment on that authoritatively. I think one of the more obvious problems is that we lean too hard on on-air fundraising to the point where we really hit diminishing returns. It becomes counterproductive, and not only do we not raise the funding that we need, but I suspect we probably lose listeners in the process. And on-air fundraising is a valuable tool. It's not at all the only way to raise funds, and there are a broad array of fundraising processes, fundraising methods we could choose from. We need to diversify our fundraising strategy, and so in that regard, I'm more able to address the issue of income rather than allocations and what's done with the money. I haven't seen the books yet. That would be one of the first things I would do when I got to the board. I would want all the recent financial statements and background information.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roberson, your comments.
I think everyone who's aware of the station or who listens are aware that we're not I guess, particularly stable or healthy financially. As you just said, we're kind of in a perpetual fund drive, which I do agree definitely does turn off the listener. If someone's always asking for money, it kind of takes away from what you're listening to, takes away from the content and the informative nature of the station. So we do, as you said, we have to diversify and get other sources for financial support of the station, whether it's outreach to other groups or communities, whether it's even just reaching to current members and following up with, engaging them to, maintain and support that relationship that currently exists.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne.
Well, KPFK is doing a little better now than it has been in the recent past, but KPFK has done better as recently as 2008. So the board's job is to figure out what we've done wrong in the past couple of years and figure out what we did right, take those two points in time and figure out how we can diversify and go forward. I think that is the seminal issue that faces us today at the station. In order to increase membership, we have to increase fundraising. We have to have the funds in order to bring the people in and do the shows. So listenership and fundraising go hand in hand. I think that's the primary reason why I'm running for the board.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez.
Yes, the local station board actually can only do so much. It really depends on solid management to rectify the situation. Our network, our KPFK is part of a larger network of stations, and the network's managed to avoid bankruptcy, but there's no quick fix. In a nutshell, we need to hire and retain competent management, improve programming, and access different forms of media for distribution of our product.
Thank you. And Ms. Van Gunten, you get the final word on this.
I think that strategic planning plays a major role in this. I appreciated the comments about the previous performance of KPFK, and that we have known how to do this well, and that we can go back and learn from when we got it right and pick up whatever ball we may have dropped. And again, I would emphasize diversifying. Fund development is a profession, and there's a wide portfolio of means available for fundraising, and we should look into more options.
All right, thank you. Well, now we come to the time where we invite each candidate to make a closing statement. You will have 1 minute, and this 1 minute closing statement will be used as part of your promo video. So let's start again with Mr. Roberson.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess my segment was kind of this, my opening statement. But again, hello. My name is Paul Roberson, and I am running for the local station board of KPFK. I again would like to solicit your support and solicit your vote. I'm here to support the station, this community, and to promote the mission of Pacifica Radio. So I appreciate your support and I appreciate your vote, and thank you for entrusting me with the ability to represent you on the LSB.
Thank you. And Mr. Osborne?
Thank you to all the other candidates, Jamie, Paul, Elizabeth, and thank you, Dorothy. The board's primary role is to create a blueprint to build a radio audience that wants to give and support KPFK. So what will the listeners pay to hear? And what can we give them more of? Then we should explore new ways of generating revenue, including sponsorship and the way other certain nonprofit radio stations are functioning here in Los Angeles and across the nation. So the board's job is not political as I see it. Like good parents who create a home environment where their children can thrive and be creative and explore, that's the environment that I want to create for the men and women who host radio shows. And the board's job is to take the financial responsibility so that we can unleash the creative talent in these people. So I'm running with a slate of other candidates who share these objectives, called the Committee to Strengthen KPFK, and you can see them at candidateslate.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Gomez.
Yes, my name's Jamie Gomez, and I'm also running for the local station board. I'm an educator, and I'm trained as an accountant and have taught accounting in the past. So I have helped out on the Pacifica National Board Audit Committee. I've been the chairman of the local station board for the past 2 years, and before that I was a secretary. I'm also running with a slate of professionals on candidateslate.org. I encourage you to look them up, www.candidateslate.org. Thank you.
All right, and Ms. Van Gunten.
Van Gunten. I'm Elizabeth Van Gunten. For those of us living outside the LA area, KPFK is a lifeline to the progressive community. I'm here from Ojai tonight. As a lifelong Pacifica listener, my priorities for my tenure on the board, should I be elected, would be to develop strategic planning for governance, for management, and for fundraising, and to diversify fundraising with a range of options that don't cut into airtime. And third would be to improve sound quality to leverage the value of our very powerful broadcast signal. I think if people at a distance could hear us better, they'd respond to us more. The board does have financial responsibility for the institution. It's also responsible for setting policy and for strategic planning. I'm running also with the Committee to Strengthen KPFK. There was several other people here this evening, and I very much appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much to each candidate who appeared this evening. I hope that the listening audience has enjoyed the conversation. Please visit KPFK's website to watch or listen to the remainder of the candidates' conversations that will be available to you. The views expressed during this program are those of the candidates and not of KPFK. Ballots will be sent to all KPFK members on August the 15th and need to be returned by October the 15th. Please visit election.pacifica.org for more information on the KPFK election. And with that, we thank you for your attention.